The Promise, Part 10 love story of Mark Davis and Lena Makosa. The door burst open, and in stepped two men. One was tall, a scar slicing through his eyebrow, while the other was shorter, his face obscured by a hood. Maria stumbled back against the wall, her heart racing. She quickly asserted that the girl was gone, that she would find her, her voice trembling with urgency. The tall man's expression remained unchanged as he slammed the door behind him, the sound echoing ominously in the small room. The shorter man moved deliberately, his boots crunching the shards of a broken cup underfoot. The tall man's calm voice cut through the tension, accusing Maria of taking their money and breaking a promise. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Hands shaking, Maria raised them in a gesture of explanation, pleading that the girl had run away and that she needed just a little more time to find her. The man's laugh was devoid of warmth, a chilling sound that sent a shiver down her spine. The buyer had already paid, he reminded her, and the time for leniency had expired. Now she had 2 days. The gravity of the ultimatum twisted in her stomach. 2 days? She echoed, disbelief mingling with fear. The man confirmed it, his voice steady. If she failed, she would take the girl's place. Before she could muster another plea, the shorter man struck her across the face, pain radiating through her cheek as she fell. As they turned to leave, the tall man paused, tossing a photograph onto the floor. Lena's face smiled up at her, a haunting reminder of her betrayal. "Find her," he commanded, the weight of the expectation pressing down on Maria. Promises were meant to be kept. With the door slamming shut, silence enveloped the room. Maria sat on the floor, her hand pressed against the bruise forming on her skin, tears falling silently. She whispered to herself that she hadn't intended for this to happen, that she merely wanted to live and repay her debts. Her gaze fell on the photograph, and she murmured for forgiveness, vowing to find Lena before it was too late. Outside, thunder rumbled across the city as rain began to seep through the broken window, the cold drops contrasting with the heat of her turmoil. She sat in the dim light, thoughts consumed by the girl who had once called her friend. That same night, driven by panic and fear, Maria knocked on her neighbor's door. Maria asked about Lena, the girl who had stayed with her. The woman frowned, but eventually nodded, revealing that Lena worked at Lee's Garden restaurant just a few blocks away. Maria's pulse quickened, clarity emerging from the chaos. Now she knew where to go. Returning to Lena and Chris, that night rain poured relentlessly over the city, with lightning illuminating the sky and thunder echoing through the narrow streets. Inside Lena's apartment, the lights flickered once before plunging them into darkness. Lena inhaled sharply in the gloom, calling out softly, "Chris?" "I'm here," he replied, rising from the couch, the dim glow of his phone casting shadows around them. "Power's out. Just stay put." The sudden darkness awakened old fears within her. The storm outside, the flashes, the roars, felt all too familiar, reminiscent of the fire that had once threatened her childhood home. Her breath quickened. Chris sensed the tremor in her voice. "Hey," he said softly, moving closer. He retrieved a small torch from his bag by the door, the gentle beam cutting through the darkness. "See? There's nothing to fear." But Lena remained tense by the table, her hands clasped tightly. "I hate darkness," she murmured. He approached her, taking her hand in his. "You're safe, Lena. It's just rain, nothing more." His voice was low and warm, wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. They moved to the living room, where he set the torch on the coffee table, its light spilling softly between them. They settled onto the couch, their knees almost brushing, the rain continuing its steady rhythm outside. For a long moment, silence enveloped them. The flickering light bathed her skin in a warm glow. Chris studied her intently, feeling something shift within him. Quiet, yet powerful. Their eyes met, and the space between them felt charged. He leaned forward slightly, his breath catching as he fought the urge to close the distance. He wouldn't let her think he was trying to exploit her fear. Yet Lena perceived the restraint in his gaze. the tenderness beneath it, stirring an ache in her chest that was hard to articulate. Her smile mirrored his, shy and hesitant, and her voice quivered as she said, "Don't go back tonight, Chris. The rain, it's too heavy." He paused, feeling a twist of unease at the thought of leaving her alone. "I'll stay until it stops," he assured her. He nodded slowly, watching her rise to change into soft pajamas, her movements slow and weary. When she returned, she handed him an oversized t-shirt. "You can wear this. I don't have any men's clothes here." He smiled, gratitude shining in his eyes. "This will do." He watched the ceiling for a while, listening to the rain, then drifted into a slow, dreamless sleep. By dawn, the rain had stopped. A pale light crept through the curtains, filling the small kitchen with a quiet glow. On the kitchen table sat a simple breakfast, a glass of orange juice, 2 apples, and a ripe banana resting neatly on a folded napkin. Beside it lay a small handwritten note. Lena picked it up, smiling before she even finished reading. "Good morning, beautiful Lena. I hope you slept very well. I didn't want to wake you, so I've already left. I went to the shelter first, then I'll head straight to work. If you need anything, just call or leave me a message. I'll be glad to hear from you. Chris." Her smile deepened, soft and quiet. The Promise Part 11 Love Story. At Lee's garden, the smell of coffee and pastries filled the air. Mr. Lee was already there, sleeves rolled up. "Ah, Chris, you're early. How's Lena?" "She's better," he said, "resting." "Good. There's much to do today. New menu, burgers. I'll show you later." Chris smiled faintly and began his routine. Lifting chairs, wiping tables, stacking glasses. The rhythm of work steadied his mind, but his thoughts still drifted to her laughter, her quiet strength in the dark. The bell above the door jingled softly. Maria Delgado stepped in. She looked tired, bruised, and cautious. Her scarf barely hid the mark on her cheek. Mr. Lee greeted her kindly. "Good morning, ma'am. Coffee?" "Just coffee," she murmured, sitting by the window. When Mr. Lee stepped out to handle a delivery, Chris approached. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Maria's eyes flicked up. "I'm looking for someone," she said, pushing a photograph toward him. "A girl. Her name is Lena." Chris looked at the picture and hid his reaction. "Why are you looking for her?" Maria's voice turned tight. "She stayed with me for 2 months, didn't pay rent, and ran off. Now people are asking for what's owed. I paid the rent. She must pay me. That's only fair." Chris's face remained calm. "How did she leave your place?" "I told her to go," Maria said coldly. "She was lazy. I couldn't keep feeding someone who didn't work." He studied her, then asked quietly, "Why are you looking for her now?" Maria leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Because there are men who gave me money. Dangerous men. They said they want the girl. She's beautiful. One of them already paid to have her. They gave me 2 days to bring her, or they'll come for her themselves. If she's working now, she can pay me what she owes, and I'll pay them. Everyone will be fine." Chris's jaw hardened, but his voice stayed calm. "You would hand her over to them?" Maria hesitated. "No, but if she pays, I'll be safe. If she doesn't, they'll hurt me. They'll find her anyway." He took a slow breath, forcing the soldier in him to stay still. "Write down how much she owes you." Maria blinked. "You? You're just a worker here. Why are you asking? The money is too much." "Write it down," Chris repeated. "Let me decide if it's too much. You don't choose who can pay and who can't." Something in his tone made her nervous. She reached into her bag, scribbled a number and an address on a napkin, and pushed it toward him. "They'll hurt me if I don't find her. 2 days, they said. And if she doesn't come to me, I'll send them here." Chris folded the napkin, calm but cold. "If they come here, they'll find no one. If you hear from her, tell her to come to me first." Maria rose, muttering, "Tell her Maria is looking for her, and she knows why." He watched her leave. The bell above the door chimed once, then fell silent. The cafe felt strangely still. Chris turned the napkin in his hand and whispered to himself, 2 days will not be enough for them. Then he slipped it into his pocket, rolled up his sleeves, and went back to work, his heart already planning what he would have to do next. Maria Delgado had already gone. Her coffee cup still sat half full on the counter. leaving behind only the faint scent of cheap perfume and something darker, a reminder of her visit that refused to leave Chris's mind. He wiped the last table with slow, steady strokes, but his thoughts were racing. Every word Maria had said kept replaying in his head. Dangerous men. A buyer. 2 days. It echoed like a threat circling in his mind. Chris dropped the cloth, glanced toward the kitchen where Mr. Lee was restocking supplies, then slipped quietly through the back door into the narrow alley. The rain was falling harder now, cold and heavy against his shoulders. He pulled out his phone and dialed Tom. The line clicked immediately. "Mark," Tom began, catching himself. "Sorry, I mean Chris. You okay?" Chris's voice was low but controlled. "Tom, I need the laptop delivered today, as soon as possible." "How soon?" Tom's tone sharpened. "Within 2 hours. Use the restaurant address. I'll handle the rest." There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" Tom asked. Chris glanced up at the gray sky, water dripping from his hair. "Everything's fine," he said. "It just needs to be done." When he returned inside, the cafe had emptied out. Only the sound of rain remained. He straightened a few chairs, cleaned the counter again, anything to keep his hands busy while his mind worked in silence. 2 hours later, a delivery man entered through the front door, holding a plain brown package. Chris thanked him, signed quietly, and carried the package to the back room. He tore it open, his heart steady but his eyes focused. Every movement careful, trained. Inside was his laptop, slim and black, the same one he'd used before leaving his old life behind. He connected it to the cafe's network through the wall cable, his fingers moving fast. Screens opened, codes, lines, encrypted firewalls. He was in. Mr. Lee's internet connection became his eyes and ears. Through it, he set up a silent layer of surveillance, accessing the street cameras nearby, linking the restaurant's small security feed, creating a soft net of protection around the area. He leaned back, the reflection of green code flickering in his eyes. "If anyone comes for her," he muttered, "I'll know before they knock." Then his phone buzzed. A message. "Lena, good afternoon, Chris. Thank you so much for the message today, and thank you for everything you're doing for me." He smiled faintly, reading it twice. For a moment, her words cut through the heaviness in his chest. He typed no reply, only whispered under his breath, "You're not yet safe, Lena. Not yet." The Promise Part 12 love story of Mark Davis and Lena Makosa. That afternoon, after leaving the restaurant, Chris didn't go straight to the shelter. The thought of Lena's street stayed in his mind, the way she had pointed across the road and said there was an empty apartment nearby. He remembered every word, every little gesture. So, as the rain eased, he crossed the city to that quiet neighborhood and found the place. The building was modest, 3 floors high. The apartment facing Lena's was small, just one room, a kitchenette, and a single window overlooking her balcony. Perfect. Nothing too polished, nothing that would draw attention. He spoke to the old landlord, paid the deposit in cash, and before the hour ended, the room was his. The apartment was set up just right for Chris. Nothing fancy, just practical. It had all the basics he needed without any frills. It felt like a place for someone trying to get their life on track, not a showy lifestyle. The simplicity was intentional. Everything looked like it belonged to a man still finding his way. But behind that plain surface, he made sure the room was safe. He installed a discreet camera near the window, one that could face the street and Lena's building, and connected it to the same private network he had set up earlier. The moment it blinked green, he knew. This was now a quiet watch point, a place he could protect her from without being seen. When everything was done, he went to the shelter. The old woman, Martha, smiled the way she always did when she saw him. "You've been gone all day," she said kindly. "Yeah," Chris replied softly. "I've been sorting a few things. Thank you for keeping the place running." Martha patted his arm. "You've got a good heart, son. Just don't forget to rest sometimes." He smiled faintly, grateful for her warmth. It was almost 4 in the afternoon when he stepped back outside, the rain having thinned to a light drizzle. The air smelled clean again, like the storm had washed the whole city of noise. Chris took out his phone and typed slowly, hesitating for a moment before pressing send. Chris, I'll be coming by this evening to see how you've spent the day. He looked at the message for a second, almost smiling at his own words. Too formal, maybe, but it was the safest way to say I miss you without saying it. When Lena saw the message from Chris, a smile spread across her face before she could stop it. She laughed softly, shaking her head at herself. Why am I smiling like this? She whispered, then admitted under her breath, I think I miss him. The thought lingered warmly in her chest. Across the city, Chris read her reply and smiled too. Without realizing, he ran his hand through his hair, a quiet excitement filling him. He carried his bag to his new apartment, set it down, and took a quick shower. When he dressed again, his clothes fit perfectly. Blue jeans, a white shirt, and a neat jacket. He looked calm, confident, and ready. Standing before the mirror, he exhaled and whispered, Let's make this right. Before leaving, he placed some folded bills into an envelope marked for Lena, meant to help her send something home. When Lena opened the door, Chris froze for a second. Her smile was so warm that words escaped him. The light from inside touched her face softly, and for a moment he could only look. Without planning to, they stepped into each other's arms. The hug came naturally, as if both had been waiting for it all day. Lena felt the strength of his arms around her, and Chris felt a calm he hadn't known he needed until then. When they finally let go, their eyes lingered, searching, saying everything they couldn't yet put into words. Chris cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. I guess you were the only one missing to make this day right, he said quietly. Lena smiled shyly, her gaze lowering just enough to make him smile too. Your hands are cold, she said gently. Let me warm them. She rubbed his hands between hers, and he just watched her, amazed at how her small gestures carried so much kindness. Then he cupped her face lightly, his voice soft. Now they're warm. She nodded, smiling. They are? Lena smiled and turned toward the small kitchen. Let me make you some tea, she said, her voice carrying that quiet gentleness Chris had come to love. He followed her slowly, watching as she moved about the space, light on her feet, graceful without trying. The sound of the kettle filled the silence, soft and steady, while the faint glow from the window caught in her hair. You don't have to, he said softly, leaning on the counter. I know, she replied with a small smile, but I want to. For a moment, everything else faded. The noise of the city, the rain, the weight of the past few days. All he could see was her, the way she stirred the cup, the way she laughed lightly when the steam fogged her glasses. When she handed him the mug, their fingers brushed, lingering longer than either intended. He smiled. You make everything feel calmer, Lena. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing. Maybe that's what you needed. Or he said, Actually, I came to steal you for a little while. Lena blinked. Steal me? I have a surprise, he said with that half smile that always made her heart skip. Chris, she said, folding her arms playfully, you're making me curious now. Then let curiosity guide you, he teased lightly. Come with me. They walked together through the calm street, the wet ground glimmering faintly under the fading light. When they reached the building across the road, Lena stopped, glancing up at it. Chris, what are we doing here? He smiled quietly. You'll see. He led her up a short flight of stairs, stopped at a door, and opened it slowly. To be continued on Saturday at 3 p.m. with 3 new parts. Thank you for watching. The Promise Part 13 Love Story. When Lena walked into the small apartment, she went straight to the fridge out of curiosity. She opened it and paused. It was fully stocked. Vegetables, fruits, juice, eggs, everything. She turned to Chris with an amused smile. You didn't tell me everything, she said softly. So we shall cook. Should we cook from here or at my place? Chris, still smiling, shrugged. You decide. Lena closed the fridge door, her eyes still on him. Let's cook our meal today here. That phrase excited Chris. That simple phrase, our first meal, stirred something deep in him. It felt like she had already accepted a place beside him. In his mind, that sentence gave him courage. Maybe she felt the same. They decided to make noodles and eggs. Chris took charge, admitting he only knew how to cook that. But the way he did it surprised her. The noodles tasted perfect, light, warm, comforting, like everything about the evening. Lena laughed, saying she didn't expect him to be this good in the kitchen. Chris only smiled, thinking that maybe she will give him a chance. After dinner, Lena leaned back on the couch, smiling. The noodles were simple, but tasted like comfort. Chris stood and walked to the small shelf where he had kept an envelope. He turned and handed it to her. "This is what I promised you," he said softly. Lena frowned playfully. When she opened it, her eyes widened. The amount was far more than she had mentioned. "Chris," she said, shaking her head, "this is too much. You gave me more than what I told you." He smiled, his voice calm but firm. "Lena, you promised me that you would take this money like you used to give food to people at the shelter. Remember how some of them refused to accept the food because they didn't want to feel needy? Don't do that to me. Just accept it, as a hand of care, not of pity." Lena smiled, a shy laugh escaping her lips. Okay, I keep my promise." Chris chuckled. "I'm glad." The laughter softened the air between them. Then Lena noticed the laptop on the small table. "You have a laptop here?" Chris nodded. "Yeah, why?" "My laptop stopped working," she said. "I was thinking I'd go tomorrow to send the money home, maybe Western Union, but the lines are always so long." Chris smiled lightly. "You don't have to go anywhere, Lena. I can help you send it online. Just give me the names of the people to receive it, and I'll wire it for you." She looked relieved, surprised. "Really? That would save me so much time." "Of course," he said, opening the laptop and switching it on. "It's easy." She held out the envelope. "Then take this back. You can send from here." He shook his head. "No, that one stays with you. I'll use my account to send it. Keep that for yourself. You might need it." He smiled faintly, his tone deep and honest. "It's okay, Lena. You don't know how much you mean to me." Something gentle passed between them, something unspoken, yet strong. Lena smiled, shyly lowering her gaze. "Let me go get my details then. I know the names, but I need to check the passport numbers." She stood up and slipped on her coat. "I'll be right back." Chris followed her to the door. "Be careful," he said quietly. She smiled. "Don't worry, it's just across the street." Earlier that day, after Chris had slipped the envelope of money under the door of Maria Delgado's small apartment, Maria had found it lying there when she returned. Her heart had almost stopped at the sight of it, thick, sealed, and heavy. She knelt down slowly, fingers trembling as she tore it open. Her eyes widened when she saw the crisp bills stacked neatly inside. A whisper escaped her lips. "He really brought it." For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of relief. She sat on the floor counting, her lips moving silently with every note. The amount was more than she expected. Enough to pay what she owed, enough to keep those men away. She hesitated for only a moment before picking up her phone. Her voice shook. "You can come now. I have your money, every cent." Less than an hour later, headlights cut through the mist outside her building. Two men stepped out of a dark car. The same ones who had threatened her the night before. The tall one went first, his face cold and expressionless. The other followed, smaller, hood still up, his presence even more unsettling. Maria opened the door before they could knock. "Here," she said quickly, handing over the envelope. "It's all there. I didn't touch a cent. The girl, she's gone. I think she left the city. I don't even have her number anymore." The taller man flipped through the bills without counting them properly, then looked up, his eyes narrowing. "You think this ends with money?" he said quietly. "The buyer doesn't forget what he paid for." Maria's voice cracked. "But you said, if I give it back—" "We said you'd stay breathing," the shorter one interrupted. "For now, we'll take this and return it to our boss. If he still wants the girl, we'll find you again. Don't disappear, Maria." He smiled faintly, that slow, cruel kind of smile that made her chest tighten, and turned to leave. Maria stood frozen, watching as they walked down the corridor, their heavy boots echoing until the sound faded into rain. Her hands shook violently. She locked the door, pressed her back against it, and whispered to herself, "It's finished. It must be finished." But she didn't know that every note she had just handed over carried a silent signal, a trace built into the currency, one that would betray anyone who touched it. It was not just money, it was bait. Before Lena came back with her info, Chris took a moment to check the security line codes to see if the money trap had done its job. The codes flashed red, and the report was already in. Chris had played a part in making the streets of New York safer by tackling crime, using his skills and insights to support both the police and military. Although he had stepped away from that world to dive into business, the soldier in him was now coming back to life, driven to protect the one person who was helping him heal from years of hurt and solitude. The one person he really can't bear to see hurt. The woman who has a way of softening the tough exterior and interior he's built over the years. With just her smile, she manages to break through his defenses without even trying. That's Lena Makosa. Check out my profile in 15 minutes for the next part. The Promise, Part 14. The alert on Mark's screen pulsed like a heartbeat. The red code blinked, then expanded into a map of coordinates and timestamps. He read it with the slow, careful calm of a man trained to notice the little things others miss. A deposit had cleared in Newark, then a small withdrawal at a gas station on the outskirts of the city. The system traced a chain of transfers, quick, dirty, and textbook. Money passed from hand to hand, then funneled into a single account controlled by a name already flagged on an international ledger. The trace stitched those transactions to a route between Spain and Mexico, a thin black line that led to a bigger net. He tapped the secure line. The number answered on the second ring. Commissioner Ruiz's voice came through, steady and clipped with authority. "Mark Davis," the commissioner said before Mark could speak. There was no question in his tone, only the professional gravity of a man who recognized work when he heard it. Mark handed over the facts with the same economy. The envelope had been taken, a deposit hit an account in Newark, partial spend at gas station 44B, coordinates logged and tied to an overseas transfer pattern. The software had done what Mark intended. The money carried a hidden signature that lit every node it touched. There was a pause, then the commissioner exhaled. The sound threaded with relief and respect. "That line, you just gave us the hook we needed," he said. "We've traced the account back to handlers connected to the Mexico-Spain trafficking ring. Units are moving right now." Mark watched the feed as the green on his screen flicked from trace to track. Within minutes, the commissioner's voice returned, more urgent now. "Newark Task Force has frozen the account. We've identified 3 names and 1 address tied to the boss. SWAT and the anti-trafficking unit are en route. Arrest teams will move on the boss's compounds in Madrid and a drop point outside Valencia. The men who took the cash? Apprehended at the gas station. We've got them in custody. On Mark's screen, the timestamps aligned. Deposit at 10:22, withdrawal at 10:36, arrest logged at 11:05. Each click of the mouse matched a step police had already made. It was surgical, clean, and fast, the exact kind of efficiency the commissioner trusted Mark to create. "You did this quietly," the commissioner added, his voice softer. "You saved us months of chase work. You always had a way of seeing the fractures others miss. I can't tell you how much that helps. I owe you, and so does this city." Mark closed his eyes for a second and let the compliment land. Mark Davis knew now, as Chris had been, the man who'd once pulled strings to get the commissioner placed where he could do the most good. The respect between them ran deep and reciprocal. Chris was really hoping Lena wouldn't catch him on this call. He kept glancing out the window, but managed to wrap things up right on schedule. "And Mark, tell Tom to expect debriefing calls tonight. This one's bigger than we thought." When the line went quiet, the trace status changed to confirmed. Target netted. Mark stared at the screen, the glow reflecting in his eyes. For a small, perfect moment, Mark allowed himself the knowledge that the 2 men who had beaten Maria had been caught, that a broader net was closing on a trafficking route, and that the envelope he'd left had done more than pay a debt. It had opened a door to justice. He whispered to the empty apartment across the street, not wanting to sound triumphant but steady and certain that there was no looming threat to his sweet Lena. This whole sneaky business wasn't his favorite, but he felt he had no other option. Being Chris was his top priority now before he could switch back to being Mark. Things had shifted for him. Keeping Lena safe felt as vital as the air he breathes. He knew he needed to sort things out without her finding out. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Lena was back. Lena stepped into the apartment, holding her passport and a folded paper in her hand. Chris was already seated at the small dining table, his laptop open, a faint smile touching his face when he saw her. "You found everything?" he asked. She nodded, her smile glowing. "Yes, my passport and the details for my mom." He typed carefully, asking now and then, "Your mother's name again?" "Makosa with an A," she replied, leaning closer, her shoulder brushing his arm. They both smiled at how near they were. Then a small chime sounded. On the screen, the words appeared, "Transaction successful." Lena's photo reflected on the laptop, smiling back at them from the passport page. She laughed quietly. "It's really done," she said, her voice light with disbelief. Chris turned to look at her. "It's done," he said gently. She exhaled, resting a hand over her heart. "Thank you, Chris. You don't know what this means." Chris stood a few steps from Lena, his laptop closed, the air charged with unspoken tension. Chris's voice lowered, calm and sincere. "Lena, I'm asking you, please, give me a chance to get to know you. Not as the man you helped, but as a man who's had feelings for you since the first day I saw you. I want to know what makes you smile, what makes you cry, how I can make you happy. I just want a chance to love you right." Lena looked at him softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mark. Chris, I'd love to have that chance too." The name Mark slipped from her lips naturally, without thought. The sound of it unraveled every restraint in his body, a quiet force pulling him a step closer, as if her words alone had called him home. Chris's breath caught. His eyes softened. The sound of her voice saying yes stopped everything inside him. He wanted to say thank you, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he stepped closer. In that moment, his control began to crumble. His pulse quickened, every inch of him aware of her, the faint scent of her skin, the warmth of her breath. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the effort to remain gentle as his heart raced. He couldn't control his body reaction. When their eyes met again, something in him gave way. He forgot restraint, his gaze shifting between her lips and eyes as if searching for permission.